about how do you master your fat burner system. And I just want to say, for those of you that are like, yes, I've been waiting for this, I want you to know I wrote a whole book on it. It's called Fast Like a Girl. It was very well received by the world. And I think if you haven't picked up that book, I highly recommend it, because what I'm about to say is really mapped out in a lot more detail there. So know that that's a resource for you. I really want to give you the highlights so you can start doing this immediately. So here's the $1 million question, and I've already alluded to it, we've already talked about it, but I want to say it again because I know this one trips a lot of you up, which is, when and how do I know I'm in the fat burner state? So when we stop eating, the last thing we put in our mouth, whether it's food or drink, the last thing that spiked our blood sugar, that starts the clock. So if I eat dinner and I am done at 8 o'clock, and I don't have a glass of wine after that, I don't have a little nibble of a dessert, it's literally the last thing. You can have water, that's fine. It's the last thing you put in your mouth that starts the clock. And now remember, it's going to take about 8 hours for the body to signal that it needs to metabolically switch. The reason I keep pointing out this 8-hour mark is because this is what science says, but also because for some of you, you may get over into your fat burner system very quickly, depending on the foods you ate. You might get over there at 9 hours. You might get over there at 10 hours. But my experience has told me and shown me and proven to me over and over and over again that it takes at least 12 hours to get over to the fat burner state. That is 12 hours without food. So if 8 o'clock is the last thing you put in your mouth, then 12 hours, we would go 4 hours to midnight, and then we would go all the way to 8 in the morning. That's not bad. That's 12 hours at 8 in the morning. Some of you might be like, wait, I'm already doing that. Great. Then let's go a little deeper. So if you go to 9 o'clock, you're now at 13 hours. 10 o'clock, you're at 14. 11 o'clock, you're at 15 hours. So that is the way we look at this, is when is the last time you ate, and when are you wanting to open up your eating window? And that's your choice, and I'm going to really dive into it here. There are also a lot of signs that will tell you you've switched over. So I'll use myself as an example. When I first started learning about fasting, I, by the way, was quite a breakfast eater. I had for years, my breakfast was either a smoothie, or my breakfast was toast with eggs or toast with nut butter on them. But I was definitely get up, have a cup of coffee, and eat your breakfast kind of gal. And I would be meander off to my clinic with a bag full of snacks. That was me. And so when I first started doing this, I noticed that I had my cup of coffee, and don't worry, we're going to unpack the coffee. Everybody wants to know about the coffee. But what I started to notice is that I would have my cup of coffee, and then I would go off to my clinic, and I'd be a little hangry. And then I came up with this concept in my mind, because I could literally feel the switch in me. Like, I would go in, I was a little bit hungry, I'd get distracted with patients, and 2 hours later, I wasn't hungry. It was like the hunger had gone. That is a sign you've switched over. That is how this system works. And so when I started to notice my hunger kicking in, what I would often say to myself is, just be patient, ketones are coming. Be patient, ketones are coming. And I would tell my brain that, and then I would go distract myself with something else. And sure enough, when an hour later, 30 minutes later, as soon as I felt those ketones click in, I knew I was in the fasted state, because the hunger went away, which is incredibly illogical. If you've never fasted before, you're going to be like, what? What? I know, when I don't eat, I get more hungry and more hungry. Now, before I go into what's all happening in that fat burner state, I want to take us back to this primal reason. Why would the body make a ketone when it hasn't had food for an extended period of time? Well, it was all designed, our primal design was so that we would shut off hunger so that we had and increased mental clarity so we could go find food. There is the number one priority of the human body is survival. Your body will do everything it can to keep you alive. That's why it stores all the toxic stuff you give it as fat. In the fat you see in the mirror, you don't like it, but your body was trying to keep you alive because its number one priority is survival. So when you go without food for 12 hours, it needs a ketone. It burns fat to make this ketone, and that ketone calms you. We're going to talk about that in a moment. That ketone kills hunger. It increases mental clarity and increases energy because you were primally designed in that moment to go find food. This is why every diet has failed you, because you have muscled your way through your diet changes. And so after a while, your willpower breaks and your discipline ability, becomes something that you just can't access. But that does not happen with fasting. That does not happen with the metabolic switch because of the ketone. The ketone is the difference. The fuel source, the energy unit you are getting over there is not glucose. It is a ketone. And that ketone is built around this primal design to stay alive. So this is why you'll hear me say this over and over again if you've listened to me on different podcasts, is this is the only weight loss plan that doesn't cost money that gets easier with time. Changes to your diet, yeah, you can get more familiar with it, but then you usually plateau and you can't drop weight. Exercise, yeah, the minute you hit this moment where, a lot of people don't even like to exercise, but then you get to the gym and all of a sudden, in order to continue to get better results, you're gonna have to up your workout, make it a little bit harder for yourself. That does not happen when you're in the fat burning state. This is why I am so excited about fasting, because it gets easier, not harder with time. Okay, so what happens now that you're 12, 13 hours in, ketones are being made, and you're in this fat burner state? The first thing that I want you to understand is this is a healing state. So food can heal, definitely, but when I first started teaching this, a lot of people were like, this is a fad diet. The fat burner state is not a fad diet way to lose weight. It is a healing state you're putting your body in. And one of the signs that your body is unhealthy is by the amount of weight it carries. All that excess hormones, all those excess toxins, all those excess glucose, it has to put it somewhere. That's a sign of poor health. So you're asking your body to release that in this fat burning state. You are literally sending a chemical message to your body saying, hey, body, I know you stored some things years ago. How about you go find that right now and you burn it and you make me a ketone so that I can go find food for you. That's the conversation that's happening in this chemical system called glucose and ketone. So your body in this fasted fat burner state will start to burn fat to make these ketones. Ketones go up into the brain, and the ketone, here's what I want you to get, and my menopausal gals out there, please listen to this. This is so important. That if I take a glucose molecule and I take a ketone molecule and I put them both into the brain and I ask the mitochondria of the brain to take those fuel sources and make me ATP. ATP is the energy unit of our body. A ketone will make you more ATP than a glucose molecule. The more ATP you have in your brain, the better mental clarity, the better focus, the better your moods. So it's way beyond just killing your hunger. You literally supercharge your brain with a ketone. The first time I ever discovered this is a really interesting story that I don't tell all the time. When I first started to understand, oh my God, we have a whole other metabolism, and it's called a fat burner metabolism. And all these fasting experts are like showing, like Walter Longo and Jason Fung and the people who came before me that were like really teaching this. I really wanted to bring it to my patients. And every January, we would do what we would call a health makeover. And I would rent a church with a big conference, a big room, and we would have hundreds of people that would gather every January. And I would give them what I called a reset. That here's the 30-day reset that you're gonna do so that you can hit your goals this year. And this particular year, I had discovered fasting. I wanted to teach my patients how they could use fasting to achieve all their health goals. But I knew, because I had been so ingrained in teaching them nutrition, I was like, they're gonna think I'm crazy, like go without food. So I literally went on a 5-day water fast. And on the 5th day, I gave the presentation. And I walked through this, what I've been walking you through, and these 2 metabolic systems. And when I got to this part of the conversation that you're getting now, I said to them, how many of you think you would pass out if you didn't eat for an extended period of time? And all couple hundred of them raised their hand. And I said, I want you to know at this particular moment, it was on a Saturday, that I have not eaten since Monday. And people looked at me, I'm like, I literally have not eaten since Monday. And that was one of the best presentations I ever gave, because I was supercharged on ketones. Right now, I am giving you this audio course on ketones. I started eating differently last night. I closed down my eating window differently. I knew what I needed to do to power up my ketone system, my fat burning system, so that I could perform. Fast Like a Girl, written on ketones. All my audiobooks, written on ketones. The ketone is the cure to that foggy, sluggish brain, because it can give your brain more ATP. Now, the other thing that a ketone does for the brain is that we have something called oxidative stress. Oxidative stress is the damage that occurs when we come in contact with toxins. We live in the most toxic time in human history. And so when your body gets ketones and it fires that up to the brain, the ketone, check this out, the ketone becomes neuroprotective. It protects you from the oxidative damage that happens from the modern day toxins. So those of you that are worried about dementia, those of you that are worried about Alzheimer's, those of you that are like watching your memory decline, please, please, please hear me. When you lean into these ketones, you not only get more ATP, you not only get more to power up your brain clarity, but it's neuroprotective. A ketone also kills hunger. So we talked about that earlier. A ketone also goes into both GABA receptor sites and glutamate receptor sites. These are neurotransmitters. GABA is the neurotransmitter that calms you. Glutamate is your excitatory neurotransmitter. It's like everybody's heard of monosodium glutamate. When you get it, you get this excitatory response. What a ketone will do is it goes into those receptor sites and turns them on and off so you have a balanced, calm brain. Those of you with anxiety, I want you to hear this. One of the greatest ways to affect anxiety is to put yourself in this fat burner state. It also, the ketone brings the inflammation of the brain down. This is my brain fog, people. It'll bring that down. And the ketone can stimulate another important neurochemical called brain-derived neurotropic factor, or what we call BDNF. BDNF is like miracle grow for the brain. So for my perimenopause and menopausal women, you lose BDNF as you go through that process because estrogen stimulated it. But you can bring back BDNF by tapping into these ketones periodically. And I'll teach you what periodically means. So one of the greatest resources for the brain is a ketone. And if you've never tapped into this fat burning system, if you've never gone 12 hours without food, this is your invitation to start to understand how you can train your body so that you can go into these fasted states so you can benefit from ketones and your life will literally change. I can tell you again, I want to go back to, I get asked all the time, how do you do as much as you do? And it is not anything more than the superpower of a ketone. And I want you to have it as well. Okay, have you been watching my videos and you're like, I don't know how to put this stuff all together? You might need my fasting lifestyle free course. I'll teach you exactly how to do it. Just click on the link above, it'll take it to you, and it's absolutely free. My gift to you. Now, ketones don't just affect your brain, although the biggest impact is on your brain. They also affect your body. And so here's some of the things the ketone does, is it prevents muscle breakdown. Okay, this is important for my friends out there that have been told when you fast, you lose muscle. It feels like you lose muscle because your brilliant body, what it's doing is it's getting rid of all the stored glucose and pouring it into the system. It's not just doing it from your fat stores. It's not just doing it from your liver, but it's also doing it from your muscle. So all the places that have been storing glucose, when you go into these fasted states, all those glucose molecules start to get poured into your system. So it may feel like your muscles break down, but you're so well designed that what ends up happening is the ketone preserves muscle breakdown. This is why you're going to learn in this course the power of the ketone is not in keeping the ketone turned on all the time. It's learning how to get small microdoses of ketones. If you fast all the time, eventually your muscle will break down. But if you microdose these different length fasts, like I'm teaching you here and like I taught you in Fast Like a Girl, the ketone will prevent the muscle breakdown from happening because you need to use your muscle to go find food, and your body knows that. For those of you that are wanting more energy, I've already stated this, the ketone gives you this consistent, clean energy. For those of you that want to slow the aging process, let's talk about that for a moment because I am not an anti-aging fan. You are aging. Every single one of us is aging every single day. We shouldn't be against it. We should be pro-aging. We should be talking about how do we slow aging, not be against it. And one of the things that we know when we look through the lens of how do you slow down aging is the ketone comes into play because it activates certain pathways in our body for longevity. These are your AMPK pathways, and these are your sirtuin pathways for my longevity specialists. So you're getting a longevity experience when you have ketones. And those of you that are completely stressed out, the ketone lowers cortisol levels. So I can tell you often, in the most stressful times of my life or when I have a lot on my plate, a lot of production to do on my plate, that I will go into these fasted states so I can get the calm of GABA and I can get the mental clarity and I can bring cortisol down. Sound good? Anybody want to fast with me yet? I really hope you see why I'm so excited about this other fuel source. Now, what I always say is that a lot of people will say to me, again, I keep bringing this up, that, well, I don't want to lose a lot of weight. I'm not looking for the weight loss experience of fasting. If that is you, when you eat, now that you understand the principles of eating, when you eat, you got to eat. You got to make sure that you eat enough. Powering up your metabolic switch is not about deprivation. It is not about reducing calories. It is not about reducing food. So when you open that eating window up, and we'll talk a little more about what that looks like, you want to make sure you eat. But for my friends that are in this for weight loss, what I want to say to you is welcome. I'm glad you found me. I'm glad you found these teachings, and I'm so excited that you're going to lose weight with this. I've watched it over and over again. But what I'm even more excited about is the other healing that can happen. And so I always say, join the fasting party for weight loss, but stay for all the other health benefits. And I looked at study after study after study, and then I taught it on my YouTube channel. And then we did something called Fast Training Week. And we still do it. So you can become a subscriber on my YouTube, and we still walk people through our fast training weeks. But we tested all the emerging science on fasting. And then I would ask for people to give me feedback. And so I had a team that would read these comments on YouTube, and they would bring to me which fasts were working, which wasn't. They would bring me the comments on like where people were getting stuck. And then I had my whole clinic that was teaching patients how to fast. We have a whole membership academy called the Reset Academy, where we've taught thousands of people how to fast over there. And I came down to the conclusion that there's 6 different length fasts that work for everyone. And here they are. Intermittent fasting is this 12 to 15 hour fast. This is 12 to 15 hours without glucose going up. You have switched over. You are now making ketones. What's happening in that time period of intermittent fasting is that inflammation is going down, hunger is being killed, and a very important hormone is going up called growth hormone. This is probably the most interesting part about intermittent fasting. Is growth hormone starts to increase. And growth hormone is the hormone that is the precursor to all of our other hormones. So there are studies showing 1,300% increase can happen with fasting in your growth hormone levels. So growth hormone is the door in to all these other hormones, especially sex hormones, progesterone, estrogen, and testosterone. Growth hormone, when it comes into your body, also slows the aging process. So you stop getting growth hormone after 30. You don't get a lot of it, which is why aging starts to accelerate at 30. But you can bring it back by intermittent fasting. And most of you will get the benefits of a ketone at between 12 and 15 hours in this intermittent fasting state. Most everybody I have trained or talked to or educated on can do an intermittent fasting of 12 to 15 hours. Now, if you're thinking, well, how often do I have to do that? Stay tuned. We're going to talk about how you switch in and out of these 2 states and how you choose your fasting length. But for most everybody, intermittent fasting is a very doable length. When I first learned about intermittent fasting, this will surprise many of you. I was like watching people intermittent fast, and I was the hangry person, right? Breakfast was really important to me. I was the snack person. Everywhere I went, I carried snacks with me. So I was looking at intermittent fasting, and I was like, no way. There's no way I can go 12 to 15 hours without food. But I kept diving into the science and looking at the science. Actually, at that time, there was a Japanese scientist, Dr. Yoshinori Osumi, who was awarded the Nobel Prize in Medicine and Physiology for a term called autophagy, which we'll talk about in a moment. And I was studying his work, and finally I was brave enough, and I thought, oh my gosh, I guess I can do this one day. And I thought, I'm going to do a 12 to 15 hour fast for one day. And I will tell you, it's a start, yes, and I want you to stay for consistency here. And that one day, I was like, that wasn't so bad. Let me try 2 days. And then I was like, that's not that bad. Maybe I could try another day of that. And pretty soon, within a week to 2 weeks, intermittent fasting at 12 to 15 hours was very easy for me. And that has been the experience that I've seen with almost everybody that I have coached through this process. So know that's a possibility for you. Okay, the next length fast is called autophagy fasting. This is at 17 hours. At 17 hours of fasting, your intelligent body says, okay, we've been over here burning fat, making ketones, but it's been 17 hours now, and it appears as if glucose isn't coming in and nutrients aren't coming in. And the reason the nutrient part is important is because you need to be in a nutrient deprivation state. So those of you that are curious if you should have your supplements in these fasted windows, typically anything at 17 hours or over, I'd recommend you don't take your supplements because you need to be in that nutrient deprivation state so that you can get the most out of autophagy. And autophagy basically means self-eating. Auto being self, phagy being eating. But the way I like to look at it is it's a bit of a detox. It's like the cell starts to detox itself, and the inner intelligence inside your cell says, okay, we haven't had glucose, we haven't had nutrients. Okay, cellular parts, you need to be better. So any cellular part, whether it's a mitochondria or whether it's damage around the nucleus or an endoplasmic reticulum, and there's so many cellular parts, it starts to clean them up. It also, autophagy, looks around the cell and says, hey, wait a second, we've got some toxins in this cell. We've got some mitochondria that have gone rogue, which is important. I'm going to tell you that in a moment, what that means. We've got some bacteria and viruses in here, and this cell is not a great cell. And so it starts to kick out the bacteria and viruses. It starts to repair the inner workings of the cell. It eats anything inside the cell that no longer serves it, and it makes that cell a better cell. There's some interesting things about autophagy that I really want you to know. One of which, it happened during the pandemic. That during this time when I was educating the world about how their metabolic system and their immune system matched, I found a really interesting study specifically done on the COVID virus. And it said that viruses don't have their own energy system. They have to work off of your energy system. So what ends up happening is if you're in the sugar burner state and a virus comes into that sugar burner state, especially if it's very high sugar, it has a party. That virus is like, woohoo, amazing. I'm going to eat all this glucose up and I'm going to replicate and I'm going to become stronger. And that infection spreads throughout your body. Whereas if that cell is in a fasted state and it's hit this place of autophagy, if that virus comes into the cell, then what ends up happening is it stops the replication of the virus. And that virus can no longer replicate itself. This is why animals fast when they are ill. This is why you don't have an appetite when you are ill. Because the intelligence in your body is asking you to move into the state of autophagy so it can do what it needs to do to burn out an infection. The other thing we know about autophagy is that a lot of you are wanting longevity. And if these cells are becoming dysfunctional cells, then when they replicate more dysfunctional cells. So if you can put yourself in a state of autophagy on a fairly regular basis, what ends up happening is you can take a sick cell, make it healthy, and now it actually starts to repair into a healthy cell. So this is how we start to overturn chronic disease. We can make our cells healthy again. And when they start to replicate, like there is a very clear path and research that shows every 7 years on a cellular level, you have a whole new body. Every cell in your body is replicating at different rates. But if you can bring back the health of your cells, when those cells go to replicate, they are going to replicate into healthy body parts. This is how we overturn these chronic conditions. The other thing that we know happens at 17 hours with autophagy is sometimes the intelligence of the cell will be like, wait a second, There is a lot, this is a hot mess in here. The mitochondria have been hijacked. They're going to start to become cancer cells. This is a quickly aging cell, what we call a zombie cell. So I'm going to need to kill this cell. And it will literally create cellular death. It's called apoptosis. So what you need to be able, what happens now at that 17 hours is some cells are functioning better, and the cells that were going to give you a cancer diagnosis or the cells that were going to speed up aging, they are killed off by the system and washed out of the system so they don't replicate. Okay, you know how when you're trying to get in and out of fat burner, sugar burner, and sometimes you struggle? It might be that you have a metabolic blocker that's at play here. Want to know what those blockers are? Click on the link above and I'll take you straight to a giveaway and you can have my list of metabolic blockers. This is why I love autophagy. The majority of my YouTube channel that has had 80 million views on it in the last decade was built off people getting excited about this principle of autophagy. So I really hope you caught how magic that is. Autophagy, by the way, is going to start around 17 hours and it peaks at 72 hours. That is your window for max autophagy. The next level fast is what I call the gut reset fast. And this happens at 24 hours. And 24 hours without food, it was a study out of MIT that showed you have intestinal stem cells. Remember, a stem cell is a cell that can go anywhere and repair all the cells. So this specific subset of cells are in the intestinal tract. And when you go 24 hours without food, what happens is these intestinal stem cells get a reboot. So if you have one of those cells that have been hijacked by obesogens and have it reprogramming to make it fat cells, these cells in your gut, these stem cells, are going to be rebooted and taken out of that state of fat production. This is also incredible for those of you that heard me say you've been on birth control for a decade. It's destroyed your microbiome. 90% of one round of antibiotics will destroy 90% of your gut bacteria. Those of you that are dealing with leaky gut or candida, or you're dealing with a small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, what I want you to know is the gut reset fast is your door into repairing your microbiome. This is how we change food cravings. This is how we get the bloatedness to go away with menopause. This 24-hour fast is magic, and I will go into the variations around it because you get this whole reset to your gut microbiome that happens because of the stem cell production. And the primal reason for this is your brilliant body is like, wait a second. We've now gone 24 hours without food or nutrients. Not only do we need to get rid of the weak cells that are holding us back, not only do we need to amp up growth hormone so that we can start to slow down the aging of this body, not only do we need to calm the brain and focus it so it can find food, but we need to get this gut ready for food so that when food comes in, we can pull the nutrients out of it that we need, that we can take those nutrients and power up the immune system and make neurotransmitters like dopamine and serotonin and melatonin and all the things that control our brain. That's why your body's doing that at 24 hours. You're still getting all the effects of autophagy. You're still getting all the effects that intermittent fasting gave you. And it didn't cost you anything. It didn't cost you anything. Can you see why I'm pretty excited about this? Okay, 36 hours into fasting. And now your brilliant body's like, hey, okay, this has been a long time. It's been a long time without food. We need to lighten the load. And any area that has excess fat that slows down the ability of the body to move, it will go and find. And it specifically goes after that, the weight around your belly, and it starts to speed up the whole process of burning fat because it needs more ketones and it needs to make sure that it lightens the load so that you could go find food because your body still thinks that it's in our hunter and gatherer time period. So those of you that are stuck with weight loss, this is your fast. I am not telling you to do it every day. Obviously, it's more than a day, but I'm not telling you to do it all the time. I'm telling you to do it in splashes to unstick your weight. And I will give you here in a moment how I like to vary all these. But the fat burner reset is your door into that stuck weight loss. Then at 48 hours, your brilliant body's like, okay, here's the deal. Food hasn't come in. We don't have any nutrients. This is getting dire. I need to ramp up your motivation to go find food. So it resets your whole dopamine system and gives you more dopamine receptor sites. That happens at 48 hours. Because your motivation to go find food, because you're really a hunter or gatherer living in a modern world, is built into your system to go and motivate you so you can go find food. So we live in a dopamine saturated world. And in this dopamine saturated world, what's happening is we need more food to make us feel good. We need more likes and more clicks on socials. We need more access to Netflix series that we can binge watch for 10 hours. We are so dopamine saturated. So when I first found this dopamine reset idea, and I saw the study on this reset to the whole dopamine, I rolled it out to my clinic. I rolled it out to my YouTube channel, and we did a 48-hour fast. And I asked everybody who had any mood disorders, anybody who was willing to admit they were dopamine addicted, anybody that was food addicted, to try this 48-hour fast and report back. And it was insane because it rebooted the whole system. So what ended up happening was weeks after this fast, because you had new dopamine receptor sites and the system had been cleared up, people were enjoying food more. People were not as craving those dopamine addictions. People's moods improved consistently after this fast. It was the most incredible thing I'd ever seen. There is some really interesting research that on obesity, that people who are obese and have food addictions require more food to get the same dopamine hit as people who aren't obese and don't have those addictions. So if we're going to undo the addiction, we need to reset the dopamine system so that you're not neurochemically fighting the desire to go grab food. Okay, and then the last one is called the immune system reset. There is a lot of people who believe that if you do 2 72-hour fasts a year, that you can reset your whole immune system, really helping prevent cancer, and also just resetting your immune system so you don't catch very many colds anymore. I fear to tell you this, but I'll tell it to you. I have been practicing these fasts for 10 years now, and I have not had a cold in close to 10 years. I had COVID. COVID was not symptomatic for me. And it moved through my system in 5 days. The only reason I was testing was because I was sneezing. So if you called that a cold, then I guess I had that. And my husband said, maybe you take a test. I took a test. I was like, oh my gosh, I have COVID, but it was a non-event for me. And I largely feel that's because I have been working on priming my immune system and working on my metabolic switch for close to a decade. And so the reason I fear telling you this is this is not a magic pill. This isn't waving a magic wand, but this is what's accessible to you that came already pre-programmed in your body. You just have to learn how to do it. So when I look at the frequency of these, what I want to point out is that intermittent fasting is something that most people do daily. Now I'm going to give you more context to that in coming tracks. Autophagy fasting, 17 hours. Usually people do that a couple times a week. Gut reset fast, that's a 24-hour fast. I recommend especially if you have some gut challenges or you've been on a lot of antibiotics or you have been eating toxic food, that is a once a week, 24 hours. Fat burner reset, once a month, 36 hours if you are stuck with weight loss. Dopamine reset, 48 hours. That would be like once a quarter or once every 6 months, especially if you're dealing with any mood disorders or food cravings or food addictions. And the immune system reset, we do it as a community. I do it in collaboration with my publisher, Hay House. We do a immune reset 3-day water fast every January and every September. And it's really fun. So if you want to do it with a group, last January, we had over 100,000 people worldwide fast together. I feel like when we fast together in a community, I highly recommend, especially when we do 3-day water fast, if we can do it as a big group, that can be really profound on not just your health, not just the health of your loved ones, but we have a world, we didn't have a COVID problem, we had a health problem that COVID revealed. And so I strongly feel when we fast together and we get healthy together, it can create a ripple effect of health across the world in an energetic way. I hope those 6 motivated you. And you see just how powerful you are. The thing that I love about studying these 6 different length fasts is that it's all within you. You're going to do this. I'm just teaching you. I have people that come up to me often in public and they'll say, you changed my life. And I always say, I didn't change your life. You changed your life. Your body did this. It's just you never got the manual on how powerful your body is. And you don't have to spend money to do this. All of this can happen for free once you learn how to fast. And Fast Like a Girl was all built off these 6 different length fasts. One of the best chapters I ever wrote of any book I've ever written was chapter 2 of Fast Like a Girl, and it takes these 6 different length fasts and it breaks it down. It has the science attached to it. So if you're trying to get a loved one to fast, you can read that. Chapter 2 is why men bought Fast Like a Girl, because it is one of the best chapters that I've ever written, and one of the best chapters I've ever seen on fasting. I spent a hell of a long time writing that chapter, so I'm super proud of it. So go check that out in Fast Like a Girl. Okay, are you fasting and you're still not losing weight? Check out this video because you might be missing a key part of your fasting experience that's gonna unlock weight loss. So if you think about it, all the humans that emerged out of that time have the gene that allows us to go without food. And that gene, they believe, is in all of us today.